Senator Sanders, great pleasure to have you on here. Do you see my concern that when the president agrees with the Republicans, those become issues that are easy to pass, but when he doesn't, the Republicans kill it in the House?
Well, Jack, let me just say this. I think there were a number of points that the president made yesterday which were exactly right. For example, infrastructure, which is not a sexy issue, enormously important. Our roads and our bridges, public transportation crumbling. We can create millions of good-paying jobs, transforming our energy system, becoming energy independent, reversing global warming and lowering greenhouse gas emissions, all very important. Lowering the cost of college, all very important. Here is my concern, though. I think there are a lot of things that should have been said that the president didn't say at all. For example, I don't think the word unemployment was mentioned. I don't think the word poverty was mentioned. I don't think the word trade deficit and outsourcing was mentioned. And I think if you're going to come up with good public policy, you have to educate the American people and understand where we are as a nation. And the reality is, the middle class is collapsing, poverty is increasing, and the gap between the very, very rich and everybody else is growing wider. And we need to understand that in order to come up with appropriate public policy. So I think there was a lot that should have been said that wasn't said. There were some things that were said were very, very good. Also, he wasn't as strong as I would have liked to have seen him in terms of Social Security. There's going to be a huge attack on the part of the right wing and on part of Wall Street to either privatize Social Security or to cut benefits or raise the retirement age. He said some words which were somewhat comforting but weren't strong enough. Social Security, the reality is not going bankrupt. It's good for 27 years, $2.6 trillion surplus. We must not privatize, cut benefits, or raise the retirement age. I wish he had been a little bit stronger and clearer about that.
All right, Senator Sanders, another word he didn't mention, by the way, or another phrase is middle class. He didn't mention that either. But, you mentioned Social Security, and that is very relevant because I saw a report yesterday saying that you and other senators had to talk the administration out of, including in the speech, cuts on Social Security or raising the Social Security age. What's the truth to that?
Well, I wrote him a letter, and we were very public about it. There was a lot of speculation, as I think many viewers are aware, that the president was willing to cut Social Security or raise the retirement age or do some of the things that his deficit reduction commission suggested. We wrote to him and said, Mr. President, keep your campaign promises. You promised to defend Social Security. You promised to, in fact, fight to do away with the cap on upper income earners so that we can strengthen Social Security and make it viable and fiscally strong for the next 75 years. So to answer your question, I guess we should be happy that he did not come out with a position which talked about cuts. But in fact, when he talked about trying to develop a bipartisan solution with Republicans on Social Security, that makes me nervous because I've not heard any serious or positive statements by Republicans on Social Security.
I want to follow up on that real quick, Senator Sanders. On the issue of Social Security, he said we're going to strengthen Social Security. Now, you're right, he didn't talk about raising the retirement age. That's a good thing. But does that, you mentioned it makes you nervous. Is that still out there? Is there still a chance that the president's going to come out and say, oh, the Deficit Commission was right, the Republicans are right, let's raise the retirement age?
No, I don't think that's the way it will shake out. What may happen is the Republicans, as usual, will be very, very aggressive. And they will come up with a position that says, well, we have to raise the retirement age to 70. Well, we have to cut benefits by 25% for younger workers. And his position may be, well, I had to reach a compromise. It wasn't my idea, but I had to work out something with the Republicans. You remember the only point where he was really strong last night, he said, I will veto any legislation which has earmarks. Well, I disagree with that, first of all. But second of all, earmarks not going to drive up the deficit one nickel more. That's not additional spending. He did not say that if the Republicans bring forth legislation or legislation is passed that's going to cut Social Security, I'm going to veto that. I would have liked to have heard that. In terms of trade also, I mean, the president, I have to say this, keeps talking about these trade agreements. Most Americans understand now, whether it's NAFTA or permanent normal trade relations with China, have not worked, cost us millions of good-paying manufacturing jobs. So, to my mind, some of the speech was good, but there was a lot that was unsaid, and based on the agreement that he reached with the Republicans on taxes, which continued the indefensible tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, I get a little bit nervous.
Senator Sanders, I want to go back to one thing here, and I agree with you. The parts of the speech where he was strongest or most adamant were the Republican positions, like banning earmarks, etc. And on the others, he seemed more negotiable. So that goes to the original question. How do you get Democratic priorities through when you have that Republican House? And really, I don't know the answer to that, and that's part of why I asked you.
Well, here's the answer. This is what I think the answer is. Number one, we need the president to be very strong. I think if the president gets up tomorrow and says, you know what, hey, let me be very clear. We ain't cutting Social Security. We're not privatizing it. We're not raising the retirement age. End of discussion. You'll have the vast majority of the American people saying, thank you very much, Mr. President. But on all of these issues, if you go to the American people and you say, tell me, does it make a lot of sense to do as the Republicans want, to give huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires, and then cut back programs for low or median income, middle income people? Vast majority of the people will say no. So we need the president to be out there mobilizing the American people and stiffening the resistance of people in the Democratic caucus to say, we're with you, Mr. President. You take out that veto pen and we'll be there.
Well, I happen to agree with you, Senator Sanders, so I hope you keep sending him those letters, and I hope they keep working. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Jack.
All right. Now, coming